Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you? And where you should not. For my ally is the Force. And a powerful ally it is. Life creates it. Makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us. And binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you. Here, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere. Yes, even between the land and the ship.
Live, this is One for the Record. I'm Diana, and today is January 9th, 2013. It is Wednesday, Hump Day, and here are your updates for today. First off, I've been watching a lot of videos tonight. That's why I'm running late. And I was looking at DUTCHSINSE's channel, and there was something about with Sandy Hook and elementary school and how some kind of fundraisers. I don't know how true it is. I'm not sure. I'm not an internet webmaster, but I guess there were some fundraisers that were pre-set up, some .orgs, before the incident at the elementary school. So maybe other people might want to investigate that more. Not sure. Saw it on a few different YouTube channels, so that's the first thing. Alright, moving on. Paul Bagley's channel, Pastor Paul Bagley's channel, is saying that the girl in Texas, that the Supreme Court was going to rule if she should wear an RFID badge. They ruled that that she was claiming it was against her religious right, her constitutional right, to not wear the badge because it tracks her, and it was like the mark of the beast, but it tracks everyone wherever they go. So she tried to fight it, and I guess she lost in the Supreme Court there. Also, there are some other laws that are coming up for vote, I believe in June. That might be whatever it was. It's going to be overturned, possibly. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you vote. It depends if it's constitutional or not. So, there you go. That's coming up in June, he's reporting, on some of the new laws. So, heads up on that one. So, let's move on to my regular standard program here. Let's go to the Extinction Protocol 2012 and beyond. So-called doomsday asteroid Apophis, much larger than previously thought, makes it about 75%, I guess, thicker or something. Let's see here. It is whizzing by the Earth tonight, Thursday morning, and they have found out that it's much larger than previously been assumed, and there's a slight chance the asteroid could hit Earth in 2036 if it goes through the keyhole. I remember reading this in 2004 when they first discovered it. Let's see here. There's a 75% increase in our estimated of the asteroid's volume or mass. And that was coming out of Thomas Mueller of the Max Planck Institute for Extraterrestrial Physics in Garching, Germany. Alrighty then. And it's also 2% wider or something. Moving on. But it is passing by. Then it comes back in 2029, where it can possibly hit some of the satellites, take those out. And then in 2036, we'll see what happens then. Then it gets even closer. So sooner or later, it's going to get very close. Pakistan and India tensions rise over Kashmir killings. They're back. Unexplained booming noises reported from South Carolina to California. And the loud explosion that jolted North Hollywood on Tuesday night is still a mystery, says authorities. There's also in Massachusetts, there's a mystery, South Carolina mystery by Red Bank in Lexington County. So there's loud booms going on, so if you hear it, you're not the only one hearing it. And they don't know what it is. It's coming from underground. Salt Lake City's reporting a mystery. Hundreds of people from Weber County to Utah, some as far as Rock Springs, Wyoming, reported that they felt shaking or heard loud booms Tuesday night, 9 p.m., and that's off of Fox 13. Earthquake swarm rattles seafloor along Carlsbad Ridge. This is in the Indian Ocean. Now let's see here. Heads up. On February 15th, 2013, an asteroid will come close enough to Earth to knock satellites out of orbit. There you go. So, be prepared. It might hit like on the cell phone. Who knows? And it's called Near-Earth Asteroid NEA 2012. Now listen to this. You know how like in Deep Impact and they had one that was very close last year, and a guy named Leo. Listen to what Leo stands for. Low Earth Orbit. So when they say Leonoid and Leo, and this guy Leo, and in the movie Leo, in Deep Impact, see, that's also an abbreviation for Low Earth Orbit. See, I didn't know that. There you go. And High Earth Orbit is HEO. Alright, so that's interesting, how they, the little words that actually mean something like LE, ELE, extinction level event. Remember, everybody's getting off into that one last year. But Leo stood for something also, I didn't know that. Now, this thing is called Near-Earth Asteroid 2012 DA-14's flyby. Alright. So remember that. Heads up. Might be able to see it quite well. Heads up. It's about 21,000 miles. Just from the Earth. So there you go. 21,000 miles. Then it says today, catastrophes from the past will strike again. We just do not know when. Alrighty then. What else we got going on here? So I'm just giving you a heads up, that's all. Just so you're prepared. This will let me go back to where I was. That would be nice too. Here we go. Oh, we don't want to do that. Alright. Well, won't let me slide down anymore. I don't think there's anything else on that one. Let me see here. Oh, there it goes. Weird. Andromeda strain. Oh, they're talking it could be viruses too. Okay, that's the end of that one. Heads up. I had a thought also. You got a lot of people getting sick with the flu. Be checked out and make sure it's the flu and not anything else that has floated over from Japan, or that it's lowered everyone's immune system because of the stuff from Japan floating over to the U.S. Just a heads up on that. Just a thought. You know? It seems like there's some kind of... Try to keep the hygiene going, because A lot of people getting sick with the flu. It's going around. It's hitting pretty hard in the state of Washington. Had some callers from Washington give me a heads up, some listeners. Alrighty then. Moving on. Hopefully you can hear me tonight. I'm still hoarse from whatever that was that I had. Hopefully it wasn't from Japan. Left me a little bit hoarse, but it's getting better, so I'm trying to speak as loud as I can so you guys can hear me. Had a couple of viewers saying they couldn't hear me very well. Alright, here we go. Couldn't get onto the Watchers. We'll try that after the E&E News. They're probably uploading the stuff on Apophis and this thing that's flying by in February. Alright, E&E News, Energy News. Doctor in Fukushima. Many feel they're being used as human guinea pigs. Also, Asahi. We are reminded anew of the huge scale of contamination released from Fukushima plant. Impossible to recover pre-disaster environment. I guess the genie's out of the box. Radiation levels not dropping in certain areas. It's a cumulative, just so you know. Let's see. Also today, Fukushima decontamination workers threatened we were punished if we tried to resist. They've been some people, whistleblowers, they were dumping radiation just straight into the river. The decontaminated stuff, they just threw it in the river. And with some of my previous articles I read. Attorney, U.S. Marine may join Fukushima lawsuit. Navy clients have bladder problems not normally seen in younger people. Also yesterday, Navy sailor says clumps of hair fell out after Fukushima plume exposure. A lot of us knew people were getting sick, bad headaches, some throwing up a bit. Alrighty then. It's terrible. Heads up. It took them 1.5 years to let us find out about that, so heads up. Make sure you're being treated for the right problem. If you're having problems like that. Alrighty then. Today, U.S. Canada. Paper. Engineer files police report after incident at nuclear site. She says she was grabbed, physically prevented from leaving meeting. Wow, what's going on over there? International media covers giant sinkhole. Never has one unleashed so much oil and gas into environment. Residents report heavy stench inside home. I think for health reasons, if you're living by that thing, I would think you should consider getting away from that. It can't be healthy for you. What do you think? You know, sometimes you gotta weigh your material things over your health. Because if you don't have your health, almost everything else doesn't matter. Remember that. You can always rebuild. But if you destroy your health, that's kind of hard to rebuild. Also, today, ABC 13. Fire erupts at U.S. nuclear plant in Texas. Emergency declared. Heads up. I'll read that again. ABC 13. Fire erupts at U.S. nuclear plant in Texas. Emergency declared. Okay. Yesterday. New Oliver Stone series. Nuclear schemes to melt polar ice caps, alter weather patterns. Burgers from an atomic skillet. So I guess there's nuclear particles that are flying over, where the ice is, and I guess that would polar ice, and I guess that would melt that, since some of them take like 24,000 years to cool down. So what do you think when that stuff flies over there and falls on top of the snow? So I'm wondering, is Japan responsible for this carbon tax, or the warming of our Earth now? I think that's a good question. Alrighty then. Moving on. Let's see if we can get into the Watchers. They might be posting something on here. Let's see. It's a long, short show today, so I was doing a lot of research to bring stuff to you. Here we go. The effects of solar viability on Earth's climate. Potentially hazardous asteroid Apophis close flyby tonight. Swarm of moderate quakes hit Carlsbad Ridge. Overexploiting of charcoal forests in Madagascar. Oh, here's something else. Let's see here. Scientists successfully drilled through 763 meters of ice to reach bedrock in Antarctic. Okay. Moving on. So we did get the... I guess the first thing I read must have been what they were adding in there. Alrighty then. And here are some helpful tips. Stay tuned. Let's listen to this for a minute. This is from PEREXUSREX, PEREXUSREX, and his name of his thing is Earthquake Warning Late 2012, Early 2013, New Madrid Fault Overdue. I'm just going to play the helpful hints, the prepare hints. Maybe this will help someone. If it even saves one of you out there, it was worth playing this. If it helps anyone out there, it was worth listening to this. Here we go. Let's turn it this way so you can hear it.
That, according to some experts, is long overdue. Step number 1, prepare a safe zone. This could be in your backyard. You may need temporary shelter, such as a small metal or wood frame storage building. This kind of structure has a good chance of surviving a strong earthquake, as opposed to a brick house built on a concrete block foundation. Step number 2, have a good supply of fresh drinking water and food, along with medicines, radio, battery backup, generator, heat, cooling, etc. And not only just enough for yourself and your loved ones. There may be a number of people that come to you for help. Prepare now. Don't forget your pets. Prepare a place to dispose of human waste to minimize the spread of disease. Know in advance where and how to turn off the utilities. Step number 3. Know the direction you live from the New Madrid fault line. That's the direction the wave of energy will strike from. The ground may move back and forth from that direction, snapping trees and knocking down telephone poles, wire lines, and rupturing gas pipes.
Any fault
Put some
line.
distance between yourself and any possible threats, and if you can't do that, then now's the time to think about moving to a safer zone. It's your life. If you want to survive, act now. Step number 4. Find out if you live near or on a fault line. Determine how far you live from the New Madrid area or the potential epicenter. That will let you know how much time you have to react. Shear wave speed or rupture speed from earthquakes travels fast, very fast, at about 6,000 miles per hour or 100 miles per minute. If the National Warning System alerts us immediately, and say you live 300 miles from the epicenter of the quake, you may have enough time to at least evacuate to open space. The speed at which shock wave travels can be slowed down by the natural curve of the rock formation. The straighter the flow of the rock strata from the epicenter results in an increase of the speed of the shock wave. Seconds count. Remain calm, but take decisive action immediately. Keep a NOAA weather radio on in your home or business at all times, set in the activation mode to receive the weekly test warning signal. Pay attention. NOAA sends a test signal every Wednesday around noon. You only have seconds to react. Step number 5, share your plans with your immediate family. Have a central location to meet. Organize a block in your neighborhood. Remember, if any cell phone towers survive, they will only last as long as their backup systems will allow. Step number 6, prepare yourself for a long period of time. It may be months before anything returns to any level of normalcy. And step number 7, prepare for lawlessness. Catastrophic events have a way of bringing out the best and the worst in human nature. Form a network of support. There's power in numbers. Step number 8, have cash on hand in case the transfer of electronic funds is disrupted. And more than likely, this will be the case. And finally, step number 9, pray. Pray for America and our leaders that they will get the message from Joel chapter 3, verse 2. And pray for Israel and the Middle East and for all the children of Abraham, wherever they may be.
Alrighty then. Let's get rid of that one now. I just wanted to make sure that, everyone's prepared for anything. You can use that scenario almost for anything, really. Just be prepared. I'm attaching videos. One is Arnie Gunderson, and there's some new information that's going on about the radiation in some of the nuclear plants and also Fukushima. So I'm attaching that. Take care. And 3 days down, 2 to go. We're going into the eve of Friday, so see you again tomorrow on the flip side. Sorry this is running so late. It's going to take a little bit also for this to attach. I just want everyone out there to be safe and be prepared for anything. Take care.
This podcast is a project of Fairwinds Energy Education. Today on the show, we'll discuss some shocking news now coming out of Japan. Though it's receiving virtually no media attention, a recent story by one Japanese news outlet has exposed what some cleanup contractors are doing with nuclear waste to make it quietly disappear. Also, more trouble for the Fort Calhoun plant as an NRC inspection report reveals that the plant's quality assurance data is in a state of disarray. Finally today, we'll discuss the findings of a financial analysis conducted by UBS Financial on the viability of some plants operating in the U.S. Joining us as always to discuss these issues is Fairwinds Chief Nuclear Engineer Arnie Gunderson. Well, Arnie, not only is it now a new calendar year, but it's a new year for you as well.
Yeah, that's right. My birthday's January the 4th, and I celebrated my 2 to the 6th power birthday. And I'll let the mathematicians among you figure out what that means. But on my birthday, 2 truly appalling nuclear events occurred, or at least came to light, that I was hoping to talk about this week. The first one is in Japan, and within Japan is making a lot of people angry. It's certainly a true scandal, and within Japan, a lot of people are very, very concerned. The mainstream media in the United States hasn't covered it, but it is a real big deal.
And Arnie, you're talking now about a recent Japanese news article, an expose, which shines the light on some Japanese cleanup contractors who, instead of bagging this radioactive waste, have taken it and dumped it into different places in the environment. Now, they were recently documented doing this.
Yeah, I have to, the Japanese news coverage has not been very good, and there's been a lot of political pressure on the Japanese papers to not cover Fukushima Daiichi accident issues. But I really got to give credit to the editors and the reporters at Asahi Shimbun. That's a major newspaper in Japan. They did a gutsy 3-part series about the fact that contractors working for the Japanese government were not decontaminating and storing nuclear waste. They were collecting the nuclear material, leaves and trees and dirt from houses and roads. And they were taking those leaves and trees and either dumping them deeper into the forest, because they're only cleaning about 40 feet on every side of every road, but they're either taking the leaves and trees and contaminated soil and putting it in the forest, or they're actually taking it down to the river and throwing it in the river. There's documented cases now by the Asahi Shimbun reporters showing the rivers turning brown because they had thrown so much radioactive dirt and radioactive leaves into them. It's a big deal. You know, it really speaks to a lack of caring for your fellow citizens when you're contracted and paid to take this and store it, and in fact you throw it in the river and let it float down to the next village.
So these workers were contractors, but who were they contracted by? Who gave the orders for them to shuffle this nuclear waste around in the environment rather than bagging it and disposing of it properly?
Yeah, the Japanese government let contracts with major construction companies. A lot of those same construction companies are also working at Fukushima Daiichi, which makes you question what they're doing there as well. But the management of those companies instructed their workers to ignore the contract. The contract from Japan said you're to put it in bags, you're to store the bags, we'll take care of it, we'll put it into a waste facility at a yet undetermined location. But rather than put it in bags and store it, these workers, under permission and encouragement from their own management, took these bags and threw them in the rivers or deeper in the forest, only to contaminate the land all over again. You know, a worker said, the Asahi Shimbun reporters confronted one worker, and he said, "I regret what I did, but management told me to do it." Well, I don't think he regretted what he did. I think he regretted getting caught, which of course is a little bit different in my mind. We're posting all the links to this Asahi Shimbun stories next to this podcast on the site, so that viewers can go in and read the gory details. But I do have to give credit to a devoted team of reporters. They spent 130 hours sitting in the woods with cameras taking pictures of these problems. They did a really good job.
Arnie, exactly how radioactive is this waste that we're talking about?
Well, the newspaper story doesn't talk about it, but I'm sure it's at least as bad as what I detected when I was in Tokyo, which was 7,500 becquerels per kilogram. That's of cesium, and I'm sure there are other isotopes as well. This was definitely radioactive waste, and if it were in the United States, we'd ship this waste to Texas, and we'd store it in trenches that then get covered over in one of the driest parts of the planet. But of course, Fukushima Prefecture has an awful lot of rain, and by just pushing this stuff deeper into the forest or dumping it into the river, they're making the problem worse.
So certainly radioactive enough to tip off sensors.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, their handheld radiation detectors would be chirping like canaries in a coal mine.
Well, Arnie, this is amazing information. I mean, is this in your mind an isolated event? Has something like this ever happened before?
Well, in Japan, it's the first time that a major newspaper's reported on it. But no, it's happened before. It's happened before right here in the United States. I don't think we should be too rough on the Japanese on this issue, where there's a long record of radiation cover-ups here in the United States. I'll give you 3 examples. There's one in California called the Santa Susana nuclear accident. That was covered up for decades. There's one in Florida, right near the Fort St. Lucie reactors that were covered up by the NRC. We'll talk about those later in the year. But the one I wanted to mention today is the cover-up that I was aware of. It happened in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And back in '83, I was a vice president in charge of a division that did decontamination. And the Department of Energy invited us and one other company, there was only 2 companies involved because it was pretty specialized work, to come down and put a bid in on something called the Princeton Avenue Plutonium Laboratory. And so Princeton Avenue is a road in New Brunswick, and on it was an old concrete building from the Manhattan Project that had done research on plutonium. And we were invited to knock it down in a controlled manner using all the kind of things you do when you're handling radioactive material. So I went in the building, and the highly contaminated portions of the building had been chiseled out. You could see in the walls where they had chiseled out pieces of concrete where there was very extraordinarily radioactive. But the rest of the building then had to be dismantled. And I had an engineer with me, and I sent him down to the town hall in New Brunswick, and I said, maybe we can find the drawings on this plant from the war years and see if they ever applied for a building permit. Well, son of a gun, the guy comes back about an hour and a half later with the drawings. And they showed not just the building, which we had the drawings for, but they showed sewage drain lines out of the building directly into the sewage treatment lines that ran down Princeton Avenue. So the sewage lines in New Brunswick were receiving all this radioactive contamination from this plutonium lab. Well, I showed the drawings to the Department of Energy lines in the ground under this facility. Then he said, we have to cancel this meeting, and based on this new information, we'll have to come back out for bids at a later date. So I was fine with that, and the other contractor left too, and I didn't hear back from the Department of Energy and didn't hear back, and about a year later, I was driving down the New Jersey Turnpike coming back from Pennsylvania, and I decided to get off in New Brunswick. So I drive down Princeton Avenue, and I can't find the lab. And where I thought it was, there was a blank field. So I drove up and down Princeton Avenue 4 times looking for this plutonium lab, and it wasn't there. It was gone. I don't know. It never went out for bid. It was gone. Well, a couple of years later, I got to talk to the contractor, the other contractor, and they had no knowledge of it either. So neither of us were told that they knocked down the building. And then, about 10 years ago, I was sitting in an airport, and this guy's sitting next to me, and we got talking, and it turns out he's from the Department of Energy, and he knows me. And we start talking about Princeton Avenue, and he said, I'm sorry, I can't tell you anything about it. It's classified. So there's an example right here in my God, the heart of a large city in New Jersey, where a building just disappeared, and no one did the real remedial work to go into the sewage lines and find out exactly what the contamination was.
So what you're saying is, rather than coming in and investigating the problem or looking to see if it was leaking radiation into the sewage lines or into any of the neighboring areas through the sewage lines, they just canceled the bidding process and made the whole thing disappear without a word.
Yeah.
So who are they?
They is the United States government, but more specifically, it's the Department of Energy, probably the most pro-nuclear portion of the federal government. Getting back to this, the issue and how this relates to Japan, the Asahi Shimbun reporters had the guts to stick with this story. I've talked to reporters in New Jersey numerous times about this, and the mainstream media in New Jersey just doesn't seem interested in doing the good investigative reporting that should be done to find out what the heck happened to this facility and what is really in the sewers in New Brunswick.
All very interesting. Arnie, you said that there were 2 things that upset you on your birthday. This story coming out of Japan being one of them. What was the other?
Yeah, the other one is closer to home. It's right here in the United States. Our listeners will remember I've spoken repeatedly since the flooding out in the Midwest last year about the Fort Calhoun nuclear plant. Well, the NRC just released their inspection report of the facility, and it's The problems at Fort Calhoun are much worse than the authorities are letting on. This inspection report talks about design documents, something called configuration management. And those are, kind of make your eyes go bleary when you hear those words. But basically, if you remember, like airplanes have a book, and every single change to an airplane is in that book. Well, at Fort Calhoun, they don't have a book. They've got a room, a huge room with all of the drawings, and they don't know what's in it. They've lost control of their configuration management system. They're finding that documents are missing, and then some of the ones they find are incomplete. In other words, some pages are missing, and then when they look at the pages that they've got, they find out that the calculations are wrong. Well, all of this has come to light now in an inspection report from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And I thought I'd use this opportunity to just read a couple of sentences from that report. The NRC has become aware of a concern among Fort Calhoun Station personnel regarding the historical quality of design basis documents in general. Now, what they're not saying there is that this problem started in 1985. So for 30 years almost, these documents have been missing, incomplete, or wrong. And the Fort Calhoun people have known about it, and now the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is just becoming aware of the problem. Another sentence in the thing is, Fort Calhoun's root cause analysis conducted in 2012 concluded, quote, the barriers of reliable design and licensing design basis documents failed. Now the NRC goes on though, and it says, quote, however, the root cause analysis failed to recognize that this is a long-standing problem, and it violates quality procedures. We could go on, but the report is very, very damning. And, it's as if I tried to sell you a new car, and I said, but we can't find all the drawings on the brake system, and we're not sure about the completeness of the calculations for the airbags. And, oh, by the way, the calculations on the seatbelts are wrong, but we want you to drive this thing anyway. Who in his right mind would allow that? And yet here's a nuclear plant that's been operating for almost 40 years now, and for at least the last 30 of it, they have known all along that they can't find out how it was ever built.
So, Arnie, my understanding is that every nuclear plant, as you're saying, comes with a book, a history of every soldered joint, every pipe, every fitting, every weld, and all of those changes or modifications are kept in this sort of quality assurance document or collection of documents. My question is, without an accurate record of these changes, is a nuclear plant permitted to even run?
This isn't the first time a problem like this has happened at a nuclear plant where they lost configuration control. There's a plant in Ohio called the Zimmer plant, and they realized before it was ever started up that they couldn't figure out how it was built. They spent 3 years and over $1 billion trying to reconstitute all this information and never could. The more they dug, the more problems they found. Ultimately, the Zimmer plant was never started, and it was a couple $1 billion loss. I think it's the same situation at Fort Calhoun. It's time to shut Fort Calhoun down. It's a small plant. They can do without the power. It hasn't been running for 18 months now, and Omaha's lights are still on. And in order to reconstitute this is going to cost more than building a brand new nuclear power plant. So the question is, though, why did we know about something in 1985 and not really discover it at the regulatory level until 2012? The NRC's got resident inspectors at every nuclear plant. So they've had 2 resident inspectors at Fort Calhoun since 1985, and they never heard that the design drawings were wrong? They never heard that the design calculations were missing? Come on, I don't believe that. And also, there's another organization called INPO, the Institute for Nuclear Preparedness Operations, and it's supposed to be tougher than the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Well, where the heck were they for the last 30 years? How can a design deficiency of this magnitude go undetected by the regulator and by the industry tough guy, INPO, for 30 years? My conclusion is they weren't looking. And that speaks volumes to the broader issue of nuclear regulation.
But Arnie, now that they have looked and identified this problem, are they allowed to continue operating?
Well, the NRC has never shut down a nuclear plant. The NRC has forced plants to continue to reanalyze the design bases, etc. And ultimately, what's happened to several nuclear plants is the plant has thrown in the towel. They said, it doesn't make economic sense for us to keep this plant running, so it's time to shut it down. The NRC has never said, you lose your license because of what you did. The NRC has said, well, in order to come back up, you need to do this, 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 and this. That's really where we're at Fort Calhoun. And I hope that the Fort Calhoun management will take a look at the mountain of problems that they face and say, this plant is not safe, we can't prove it's safe, and it's time to do a nice orderly shutdown and go about our lives with a different form of power.
Arnie, you've had quite a bit to say about nuclear plants in the U.S. and how financially viable they are. Now, just recently, UBS Financial did their own analysis of several nuclear plants in the U.S. and came back with some information. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. We've been saying on these podcasts all along that some of these old single-unit plants like Vermont Yankee or Oyster Creek or Fort Calhoun should be shut down because they make no economic sense. Longtime viewers will have heard me say that likely for the last 18 months. Well, UBS Financial is a security analyst firm, and they came out just this week, a report that basically says the same thing. It focused on reactors owned by Entergy, and specifically on Vermont Yankee, and they said they can't figure out how continuing to operate Vermont Yankee makes any economic sense. They also said that if they were Entergy, they would pull the plug and shut it down. I also think that the Palisades plant, which is in Michigan, also an Entergy plant, old, small, rundown, is likely to face the exact same problem. So it's interesting to see the financial community coming to the same conclusion that I did.
Well, Arnie, what a way to start 2013, and what a way to celebrate your birthday with all of this news.
Yeah, well, there never seems to be a shortage of stories to talk about on these podcasts, and I'm sure that will continue all the way through 2013. I'd like to again thank the editors and the reporters at Asahi Shimbun, and also especially I'd like to thank the viewers and listeners to these podcasts who contributed to the fund drive we had last month. Thank you. We're sure we can keep you informed for another year.
All right, Arnie Gunderson, thanks again so much for joining us, and happy 2 to the 6th.
Okay, Kevin, thanks.
Well, that does it for this week's edition of the Energy Education Podcast. Remember, you can catch us back here next Sunday and every Sunday for more on what's going on in the world of nuclear news. For the
energy project manager, and he almost went white, and he had no idea there were